the threat is very clear, and it is a global moment, which third way neoliberal nonsense is entirely unequipped for. And neoliberal had its reign. It looks like now we're having a reign of at least a form of really bluntly neo-fascism. Now, Steve Bannon understands this. And it's actually really important that while we mock and disdain and hold contempt for these disgusting people, we realize where they're shrewd. And this is what happened. This is what Breitbart was. Well, the whole mainstream of the establishment of the Republican Party was actually ensconced in a fantasy that there were normal people in Wisconsin who actually like read the National Review and, you know, cared about giving the Koch brothers tax cuts and felt solidarity in their small business with the titans of Wall Street that ran the world. And really were looking to the, you know, the sensible job outsourcing leadership of Mitt Romney. Donald Trump comes along and says, look, on one hand, here's a bit of reality you haven't heard in ages, which is that you're actually getting economically screwed. And I'll also give it to you without subtext. I'm a bigot. Because it's also the politics of white identity. This is Steve Bannon. In 2014, he was at a conference at the Vatican where he revealed the populist politics that also underpinned Breitbartism. Because if you don't have left politics that is also anchored in economic justice, and it is about being truly intersectional. Some people want to say they want to be intersectional, but actually they only want to talk about identity. They don't also want to talk about class. I'm saying it is a must and a necessity we talk about and deal with all of it simultaneously, because there's no contradiction between recognizing class structure and inequality and white supremacy and misogyny. There's no contradiction. In fact, the sooner we recognize that, the sooner we could potentially save ourselves. But this is Steve Bannon, quoting now from this conference in 2014 at the Vatican. The 2008 crisis is really driven, I believe, by greed. Much of it driven by the greed of investment bankers. I think the 2008 bailouts were wrong. Not one criminal charge has been brought to any bank executive associated with the 2008 crisis. The Republican Party is really a collection of crony capitalists that feel they have a different set of rules, unquote. The reason the United and quote unquote the reason the United States financial crisis is so dire. Now, he goes on to say that he's not a racial nationalist, he's an economic nationalist. And a quote more, now this is not him directly quoted anymore, this is from a piece in Quartz. This is the gist of Brannon's takedown of Wall Street. American capitalism in its current form is immoral. Investment banking greed caused the 2008 global crisis. The quote-unquote outrageous bank bailouts shunted economic burdens onto middle-class taxpayers, hurting the economy and leaving many, particularly millennials, without jobs. Shareholders, bank executives, and crony capitalists, meanwhile, made out like bandits. Nothing's changed to fix it. Banks are still bent on turning hedge fund-style profits, ignoring their proper role in the economy, lending and investing in entrepreneurs, and the guilty parties have, quote-unquote, never really been held accountable. Now, it also points out that Bannon himself is a former Goldman Sachs guy, plutocrat, and apparently also does want to deregulate, get rid of what minimal financial reforms we actually have had under the age of Obama. And there's zero indication since Trump has come to office and surrounded himself with every type of sleazy lobbyist you can imagine that they're serious about this agenda. But this is the opening. Because part and parcel with what is right is there are too many Asian CEOs in Silicon Valley, which is something Bannon has also pontificated on. It's a website that is driven on a constant environment of hate, conspiracy, innuendo, and fantasy about people of color, about women, about LGBTQ people. But the opening is there and a door to step through as long as there is not a real left. Not having a real left is a clear and present security danger to the planet. And I'll get back to another facet of the alt-right, but I want to underline this point because in some ways, this piece that I'm about to quote from is more important than understanding the Trump voter. There's some people that voted for Trump that also voted for Obama that I think, it really is about a sense of dislocation in economics, and that's real. There's people who voted for Trump who are in a world of conspiracy theory, delusion, and misinformation, and I don't really know how that's overcome. And there's the white vote in the Republican Party that it's about white identity. It's about white nationalism. It's a real thing. It's a political conflict. It needs to be historically and politically defeated. It cannot be compromised. Again, there's no contradiction.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.